Most men are taught to believe attraction begins with what can be seen on the surface. They think it starts with perfect looks, the right clothes, a polished line, a bigger paycheck, or the kind of charm that sounds good for a few seconds and disappears just as fast. But real attraction rarely starts there. What draws someone in on a deeper level is not always what stands in front of their eyes. It is what they feel in the presence of a person. It is the atmosphere around them, the emotional signal they give off, the sense of certainty, calm, and self-command that cannot be faked for long. That is why sometimes one man can say very little and still leave a stronger impression than someone who talks nonstop trying to prove his value. Attraction is not always built through explanation. It is often felt before it is understood. Before logic gets involved, before labels are placed on it, before anyone can explain why they are paying attention, something deeper has already made the decision. That is what so many people miss. They focus on performance when the real force is presence. There is a kind of energy that does not ask for permission to be respected. It does not beg to be noticed. It does not strain to dominate the room, and yet it changes the room anyway. Some people walk in and immediately create noise around themselves. They want to be seen, approved of, admired, validated. Every word they say carries the subtle pressure of needing a reaction. Every joke is measured by whether someone laughs. Every compliment is secretly a test to see whether it earned them attention. People can feel that. Even when the words sound right, the energy behind them reveals the truth. Neediness has a frequency. Insecurity has a rhythm. Trying too hard always leaks through. And the moment someone senses that you are performing for their approval, your power starts to fade. Because attraction weakens when it feels forced. It grows when it feels natural, unshaken, and real. The truth is, confidence is not loud. It does not need constant display. It does not rush to fill every silence out of fear. That silence will expose weakness. Real confidence is comfortable with space. It is comfortable with pauses. It is comfortable with not being immediately understood. A grounded person does not panic when attention leaves the room for a moment. They do not scramble to pull it back. They trust their own value without having to announce it. That kind of calm is rare, and because it is rare, it is magnetic. People are used to noise. They are used to over-explaining, over-chasing, over-performing. So when they encounter someone who is settled in themselves, someone who is not trying to impress anyone and yet naturally commands attention, it stands out immediately. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is solid. It feels different. It feels safe, but it also feels powerful. And that combination is unforgettable. Attraction often begins in the smallest details, the things most people never think to examine. The pace of your movements, the way you hold eye contact without forcing intensity, the way you listen without trying to turn every moment back toward yourself, the way you speak without rushing to fill dead air, the way you enter a space without apologizing for existing in it. These details communicate more than rehearsed words ever can. They reveal whether a person is comfortable in their own skin or whether they are constantly adjusting themselves based on how they think they are being judged. And people are more perceptive than most realize. They may not consciously analyze every gesture, but they feel the effect of it. They can sense whether someone is centered or scattered, whether they are genuinely present or mentally begging for approval, whether they are secure enough to let a moment breathe or too anxious to let silence exist. Think about how often people mistake attention for attraction. They assume that if they give more, say more, compliment more, message more, explain more, they will become more desirable. But attraction does not grow through pressure. It grows through emotional impact. If someone feels that you are trying to win them over at all costs, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly the mystery is gone, the tension is gone, the sense of depth is gone. Everything becomes predictable, and predictability, when combined with neediness, kills intrigue. The strongest presence is not the one that demands attention. It is the one that remains whole whether attention comes or not. That is what changes the emotional equation. Because when someone meets a person who is fully grounded, fully self-contained, and fully present without trying to control the outcome, they feel something different. They feel the absence of pressure. They feel the absence of desperation. And in that absence, curiosity begins to grow. The men who stay in someone's mind are rarely the ones who work the hardest to be remembered. They are usually the ones who seem complete before anyone else arrived. They did not radiate the energy of a person trying to be chosen. They radiated the energy of someone who had already chosen themselves. That difference matters more than most people understand. When you are trying to be chosen, your actions become reactive. You monitor everything. You overread every expression. You tailor yourself to what you think will get the best response. But when you have already accepted yourself, your behavior changes. You stop negotiating your worth in every interaction. You stop trying to manufacture attraction with tricks or scripts. You stop treating another person's reaction like a verdict on your value. And once that happens, your presence becomes cleaner, stronger, more attractive, not because you are trying harder, but because you are no longer leaking insecurity into every moment. There is also a powerful difference between attention-seeking and emotional steadiness. One screams, the other settles. One tries to dominate, the other does not need to. A person who is always trying to be impressive often becomes exhausting. There is no rest around them, no grounding, no sense of ease. But a person who knows who they are creates emotional space. They do not crowd others with their agenda. They do not force chemistry. They do not rush intimacy. They allow connection to unfold instead of trying to drag it forward. This makes people lean in naturally, because what feels rare today is not intensity, but depth. Not performance, but authenticity. Not pressure, but calm. Everyone has met someone who looked right on paper and still felt empty in person. And everyone has met someone who was not trying to do much at all and still became impossible to ignore. The difference is never just appearance. It is the inner condition beneath the surface. One of the strongest forms of attraction comes from emotional restraint. Not coldness, not detachment, not pretending not to care. Emotional restraint is the ability to feel deeply without losing control of yourself. It is the ability to stay measured when others become chaotic. It is the ability to remain composed when a moment becomes uncertain. Anyone can seem confident when everything is going their way, but the person who remains centered when things do not go according to plan reveals something far more compelling. They reveal strength that is not situational. They reveal inner structure, and that kind of strength creates trust. It suggests that being around them will not feel like being trapped in someone else's emotional storm. It suggests maturity, stability, depth. These are qualities that quietly shape attraction far more than flashy displays ever will. People often talk about mystery as if it is a strategy, but true mystery is not about hiding yourself. It is about not needing to explain yourself too quickly. It is about allowing layers to exist without rushing to expose all of them at once. A person becomes intriguing when they are fully present, yet not entirely easy to read. Not because they are playing games, but because they are not performing for immediate approval. They do not hand over every thought just to keep attention alive. They do not rush to fill the space with personal details to force a sense of closeness. They are open, but they are not over-eager. They are warm, but not available to everyone in the same way. They let their character reveal itself over time. And time builds tension. Time creates anticipation. Time allows another person to feel that there is more beneath the surface. That is where real intrigue lives. Another truth many ignore is that attraction is deeply connected to how a person feels around you, not just what they think about you. Logic can admire someone, but emotion is what pulls someone back into memory. A person may forget the exact words you said, but they will remember whether your presence made them feel calm or tense, seen or dismissed, safe or pressured, curious or drained. That emotional residue is what lingers. So if every interaction is filled with nervous over-talking, trying too hard, or subtle desperation, that becomes the feeling associated with you. But if your presence communicates calm, clarity, and quiet self-trust, that becomes the emotional signature people remember. This is why two people can say similar things and create completely different reactions. The words matter less than the energy carrying them. A lot of men sabotage themselves by making attraction their main goal in every interaction. The moment that becomes the obsession, everything tightens. Their words become calculated. Their tone becomes unnatural. Their body language becomes restless. They stop being present because they are too busy measuring whether they are succeeding. And that kind of internal pressure is felt immediately. Ironically, the more a person tries to force attraction, the less attractive they become, because attraction responds best to freedom, not strain. It grows when someone is rooted in themselves enough to let things unfold without clinging. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming self-possessed. It means showing interest without collapsing into pursuit. It means being expressive without overinvesting in instant results. It means carrying desire without letting desire control your behavior. There is a major difference between intention and attachment. Intention is clear, grounded, and confident. Attachment is anxious, needy, and outcome dependent. A person with intention can show genuine interest, speak directly, and engage openly, but they remain emotionally balanced no matter what response they get. A person with attachment, on the other hand, treats every interaction like a fragile test of worth. If the reaction is good, they feel high. If the reaction is uncertain, they spiral. That instability changes everything, because when your mood and confidence are controlled by someone else's approval, your presence becomes emotionally expensive to be around. Strong attraction does not come from trying to grip the moment tighter. It comes from being so internally stable that the moment can breathe in your hands without you crushing it. This is why self-respect is one of the most attractive traits anyone can develop. Self-respect changes how you speak, how you choose, how you respond, and what you tolerate. It removes the urge to overextend yourself for people who are unclear, inconsistent, or uninterested. It stops you from chasing where you are not valued. It teaches you that connection should not require self-abandonment. And when someone carries self-respect, it shows long before they mention a single achievement. It shows in their boundaries. It shows in their standards. It shows in the way they do not shrink themselves for acceptance. It shows in how they can be kind without being spineless, open without being desperate, and interested without becoming consumed. That balance is powerful. It tells the world that this person values themselves enough not to trade their dignity for temporary attention. Another overlooked part of attraction is direction. People are drawn to those who seem to be moving somewhere internally, not just externally. A person with purpose carries a different kind of weight. Their life is not organized around being liked. Their energy is not drained by constant comparison. They have a center of gravity that exists outside of validation. This does not mean they are unavailable or emotionally closed. It means they are not empty. They are not looking for someone else to supply the meaning they have not built within themselves. And that alone changes their presence dramatically. When someone has direction, even their stillness feels alive. Even their silence has substance. They are not quiet because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because not every moment requires proving something. They are not calm because they are passive. They are calm because they are anchored. That inner anchor is what separates compelling presence from surface-level charm. Charm can get attention. Presence keeps it. Charm can create a moment. Presence creates impact. Charm is often built on adaptability, on saying the right things at the right time. Presence is built on identity, on congruence, on the feeling that the person standing in front of you is the same person no matter where they go. That consistency is deeply attractive because it feels trustworthy. It feels solid in a world full of people who shift themselves constantly to gain approval. A person with presence does not need to be perfect. In fact, perfection is often less attractive than authenticity. What matters is coherence. Their words, energy, behavior, and boundaries all align. There is no desperate scramble underneath the surface, no frantic need to be admired, just steadiness. Many people misunderstand the role of silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence can be confidence. Silence can be thoughtfulness. Silence can be emotional control. The urge to fill every gap usually comes from fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being boring, fear of losing attention. But someone who is comfortable with silence communicates something powerful without saying a word. They are not afraid of the moment. They do not need constant stimulation to feel secure. They trust themselves enough to let presence do some of the work. And often, it is in those pauses that attraction grows strongest, because pauses create tension, pauses create awareness, pauses let the other person feel you instead of just hearing you. Noise grabs attention briefly. Stillness often holds it longer. There is also strength in selective attention, not in being dismissive, but in not handing your focus away so cheaply. When a person gives full, undivided presence too quickly and too easily, it can feel less meaningful. But when attention is intentional, when it is calm, focused, and not thrown around impulsively, it gains weight. People value what feels real. They value being seen by someone who is not constantly scanning for approval or trying to impress everyone in the room. That is part of what makes certain people unforgettable. When they look at you, it feels deliberate. When they listen, it feels undistracted. When they speak, it feels considered. Their energy is not fragmented, it is directed. And directed energy is powerful because it suggests self-mastery. What often disrupts attraction, the fastest, is emotional overexposure too early. Telling too much, needing too much, asking for too much reassurance too soon. Deep connection requires vulnerability, but vulnerability without emotional timing can feel like pressure instead of intimacy. A grounded person understands pacing. They let trust build, they let chemistry breathe. They do not try to fast forward closeness because they are uncomfortable with uncertainty. They can handle not knowing exactly where things are going. That patience signals maturity. It shows they are not trying to use another person to regulate their emotions. They are capable of holding their own internal state, and that capability makes connection feel more organic, more natural, more compelling. A strong presence also comes from not being enslaved by reaction. Some people enter every interaction hoping to be desired. Others enter grounded in who they already are. The first becomes dependent on feedback. The second remains stable regardless of it. This does not mean indifference. It means freedom. It means you can appreciate someone without needing them to complete your self-image. You can desire connection without becoming desperate for it. You can be interested without losing your center. That is what creates emotional gravity. People are drawn to those who are connected to themselves because that connection creates a sense of order. It suggests that being around them will not feel chaotic or draining. It suggests that they know how to hold themselves and, by extension, how to hold space for others. In the end, attraction is less about tricks and more about transmission. What are you transmitting when you walk into a room, when you speak, when you look at someone, when you listen, when you leave space, when you handle uncertainty? Are you transmitting need, fear, and the hunger to be chosen? Or are you transmitting calm, self-trust, clarity, and grounded intention? People respond to what you radiate long before they decode it intellectually. That is why no script can save a person who is deeply disconnected from themselves. And that is why someone with very few words can still become magnetic. Because what matters most is not the line. It is the life behind the line. Not the performance, but the person. Not the strategy, but the state. So the real shift is this: stop asking how to make someone feel drawn to you, and start asking what kind of presence you carry when you are no longer trying to force anything. Build the kind of inner stability that does not crack under silence. Build the kind of self-respect that does not chase confusion. Build the kind of purpose that keeps your life full whether someone stays or goes. Build the kind of emotional control that lets you feel without losing form. Build the kind of clarity that makes you direct without becoming needy. Because the most compelling energy in any room is not the loudest, the flashiest, or the most desperate to be seen. It is the energy of someone who is already at home in themselves. And that is the part most people overlook. Attraction is rarely created in the moment it appears. It is created long before, in the private ways a person learns to carry themselves, regulate themselves, respect themselves, and define themselves. It is built in the habits that create composure, in the standards that protect dignity, in the mindset that refuses to beg for what should be mutual, in the discipline of staying centered when life tests your confidence, in the quiet decision to become whole instead of endlessly seeking someone else to fill the missing parts. When someone reaches that state, they stop feeling like they need to convince anyone. Their energy changes naturally. Their attention becomes cleaner. Their words become fewer but more effective. Their presence stops chasing and starts drawing. So, if there is one truth to remember, it is this: what pulls people in is not the strain to be impressive, but the depth of someone who no longer needs to perform for worth. The strongest attraction does not come from forcing chemistry, over-explaining your value, or chasing every spark of attention. It comes from inner steadiness, from calm confidence, from emotional discipline, from being fully present without being attached to the result, from carrying yourself like someone who knows that connection is meaningful, but self-abandonment is never the price for it. That kind of presence cannot be copied for long, because it is not a tactic. It is the result of inner work, and when it is real, people feel it immediately. They may not always be able to explain it. They may not even fully understand why it affects them, but they feel the difference. They remember the difference, and that is what makes presence powerful. Not because it chases attention, but because it quietly becomes impossible to ignore.